Hi, welcome back. And in this particular learning objective, we're going to look at the classical dichotomy and the idea of money neutrality. So let's go ahead and David Hume, one of the things that he talked about was the difference between nominal variables and real variables. As we've talked about in previous chapters, we know that the difference between nominal and real variables is that nominal variables are affected by inflation. So anytime you see the word nominal, we know that that means that it has inflation present. What's interesting is that the only thing affected by inflation is nominal variables. Real variables, things like houses, things like anything in the investment categories, would not be considered or affected by inflation. And that's kind of interesting, especially when we think about the tax implications to inflation. So here's an example of this classical dichotomy. If we measure things in terms of goods, so imagine going back to a barter economy. If we take away the dollar value of things, say we're going to trade with each other in terms of CDs and pizzas, and we've decided that a CD is worth $15, a pizza is worth $10, and we decide then that a pizza is worth a half of a CD, or 1.5 pizzas equal 1 CD. Well, what's interesting is that the prices can change, but this idea of the relative value, the price of CDs in terms of pizzas and pizzas in terms of CDs, never changes because it's a physical unit. So economies that don't use monetary values are not susceptible to inflation. If we had a barter system and a barter system alone, where we did not use money as a sign of value, then we would not have inflation. So that's kind of interesting if you think about that. So here's another example, relative wage and real wage. So if we have nominal wages, where the price of labor is $15 per hour, and then we have the price of goods and services at $5 a unit, and we take the nominal wage divided by the price level of goods and services, then we get that we have 3 units per hour. This hourly wage, this nominal wage, could increase with inflation, but the price per unit would still be the price per unit. And so what happens is this output per hour wouldn't really change because of the relative value. And so what should you remember about this? Just remember that real things never change value in an inflationary state. And that's this classical dichotomy, that all nominal variables will change with inflation. Real variables will remain unchanged. And that becomes pretty important when we think about how things are affected by inflation. Going back to our pizza and CD example, here if the cost of pizzas and CDs doubles, notice that the relative price is still the same. Our dollar values have changed. Instead of 15, we have 30, and instead of 10, we have 20, but the relative price remains unchanged. So that's kind of, again, like I said, the money supply or inflation does not affect real variables. So again, the real wage doesn't change. So again, just kind of think about this money neutrality, that real variables don't change. That's why real GDP doesn't change when we talk about inflation. However, nominal GDP does in fact change. Well, it describes, this idea does describe things in the long run, but a lot of short-term effects do happen in terms of real variables. You'll see this a lot more in microeconomics than you will in macroeconomics. So just kind of something to keep in mind. But for our purposes in the principles class, just remember that inflation does not affect real variables. It only affects nominal variables, are the only things that are susceptible to inflation. Thanks.